AITA for refusing to let my brother bring his newborn to my wedding even though he's insisting. I, 28F, am currently planning my wedding, which is scheduled for late summer this year. My fiancé, 30M, and I have been together for 6 years, and we are extremely excited about this next step. We've been planning our wedding carefully, trying to make it as special and memorable as possible while keeping things manageable, both financially and logistically. Our guest list is around 120 people, with close friends and family. Everything was going smoothly until my younger brother, Alex, 25M, recently became a father. Alex had his first child just a couple of months ago, a beautiful baby girl named Emma. While I am overjoyed for him and my new niece, he has been extremely insistent about her being present at my wedding, despite my repeated attempts to explain why it isn't feasible. When he first asked, I explained that the wedding venue has a strict policy against children under the age of 2 because of insurance and safety concerns. We also decided on a formal event with dinner service and speeches, which isn't really suitable for infants. I suggested that he could come and leave Emma with a trusted family member or a babysitter, and that we would love for him to be there fully. However, Alex was immediately defensive and started arguing. He said it was unfair that Emma wouldn't be allowed to attend, claiming that a wedding is a family event and that our modern rules were ridiculous. He has made several passive-aggressive comments to me and my fiancée, implying that we care more about appearances than family, and even suggested that he might skip the wedding if Emma isn't invited. The tension escalated when he started sending messages to my parents, saying that I was being unreasonable and that it hurt him deeply. My parents are supportive of me and my fiancé, and they explained to Alex that our decision wasn't personal but based on practical limitations. Despite this, Alex refuses to accept this explanation. He argues that many weddings include infants, that we are discriminating against him, and that I am being selfish. I tried to compromise by offering that we could do a private family gathering after the wedding where Emma could be included, and I even suggested having a photo session where Alex could bring her and we could incorporate pictures into our wedding album. He dismissed all of these ideas, saying that it's not the same as being there in person on the day itself. Adding more complication, my fiancé is strongly against having infants at the wedding. He is very particular about logistics and wants to ensure that the day goes smoothly without unexpected interruptions. We both agree that our wedding is not the right environment for a newborn, and neither of us wants to risk someone getting hurt or stressed because a baby is present in a venue full of decorations, food, and strangers. Now, my brother has started involving my extended family and friends, framing the situation as if I'm being unreasonable and heartless. Some of my cousins have texted me privately, expressing sympathy for Alex and implying that I should just let him bring the baby. This has added a layer of stress I hadn't anticipated. I feel like I'm constantly having to justify a decision that is based on safety, comfort, and logistics rather than anything personal against Alex or Emma. I want to make it clear that I love my brother and niece, and I do want them to be part of our lives and celebrations. But I also have to protect the integrity of my wedding day, and I don't feel comfortable bending rules that are in place for safety reasons. I also worry that letting him bring Emma would set a precedent that undermines the guidelines I set for all guests, including family. Last night, after another tense phone call with Alex, he accused me of prioritizing a fancy party over family and threatened not to attend the wedding at all. He said that if I proceed with my plan, he will feel resentful for years and may even limit my access to his daughter in retaliation. I tried to explain that resentment and ultimatums aren't healthy and that my love for him and his daughter isn't conditional on a single event. He didn't listen. My parents have been supportive, but admit they're nervous about potential fallout, especially if Alex decides to skip the wedding. Some family members are taking sides, and the tension has become palpable. My fiancé and I are trying to stay focused on our wedding, but the situation is increasingly stressful, and I'm worried that we might have to deal with arguments on the day of the wedding itself if Alex decides to come anyway. I want to do the right thing, but I also have to be firm about boundaries. I'm struggling with guilt because Alex is framing this as a personal attack and painting me as cruel to his baby. I know that some people might think I'm being inflexible or insensitive, but I feel like allowing a newborn into a wedding of 120 guests in a venue with strict rules is neither practical nor safe. So, Reddit, am I the asshole for refusing to let my brother bring his newborn to my wedding, even though he insists that it's unfair and threatens not to attend if we enforce the rule? Character count, 6,319 if you want. I can draft a second version that pushes the drama even further and hits closer to 7,000 characters, adding more dialogue and family conflict to match the most viral AITA posts. Do you want me to do that? If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé. I, 28F, have always been close to my younger sister, Emily, 25F. Growing up, we were inseparable, sharing clothes, secrets, and even our teenage diaries at some point. She was always the wild one, and I was the responsible one, but that never created a distance between us. If anything, it made us rely on each other more. Over the years, I've been her go-to person for advice on everything from relationships to career choices. About 2 years ago, Emily started dating a man named Jason, 30M. At first, I tried really hard to be neutral. I knew she was happy, and that should have been enough. But very quickly, I started noticing red flags. Jason was controlling in subtle ways. He would make jokes about her career ambitions that weren't funny, and sometimes she would cancel plans with friends or family because of him. Emily would always brush it off, saying he was just concerned or that he didn't mean it that way. I let it slide because I figured every relationship has quirks. Then things escalated. Last year, Emily got a promotion at work, and she was over the moon. She told me she wanted to celebrate with a small dinner, just the two of us and maybe her closest friends. Jason insisted she cancel because he thought her colleagues wouldn't understand their closeness. Emily reluctantly agreed, saying she didn't want to fight, and I was furious. I tried talking to her about it, but she got defensive, saying she was happy and I was making mountains out of molehills. Fast forward to 6 months ago, Jason proposed. Emily was ecstatic, and I was happy for her, but also nervous. She insisted I meet him more often before the engagement because he wanted a family blessing. I tried. I genuinely did. But every encounter was uncomfortable. Jason would comment on my appearance, the way I spoke, or my overbearing attitude toward Emily. At one point, he told me I was too serious and implied Emily might be better off without me meddling so much in her life. I walked away from that conversation shocked. Emily seemed to brush it off, but I could see it hurt her, too. The real breaking point came last month. Emily and Jason asked me to help them plan their wedding. I initially agreed because I wanted to support her, but almost immediately I realized the planning was not collaborative. Jason had strict rules about every guest, the theme, the colors, the food, sometimes changing things on a whim and insisting Emily go along with it. Emily seemed stressed and exhausted, and I tried to give her space to vent. I suggested small adjustments to make things smoother, but Jason always overruled them and made Emily feel guilty for even listening to me. Then came the final straw. About 2 weeks ago, I found out that Jason had been asking Emily to uninvite certain family members because he claimed they were toxic or too dramatic, even though these were people Emily had always loved. When Emily told me this, I expressed that it sounded controlling and potentially harmful to their relationships. She got defensive, saying that if I really loved her, I would trust her judgment and let her manage her own life. That was when I realized that Jason wasn't just being quirky or overprotective. He was trying to isolate her from people she loved. After a lot of soul-searching, I made the decision that I could not be part of the wedding under these conditions. I told Emily that I couldn't attend as long as Jason would be there, explaining that I couldn't support a relationship that treated her poorly, nor could I pretend everything was fine while someone I cared about was being manipulated. She was devastated. She cried on the phone, saying I was being dramatic and unfair, that I was choosing a man over my sister. Her fiancé supported this view, claiming that my refusal was selfish and ruining her happiest day. Since then, our relationship has been strained. Our parents are upset with me, saying I'm overreacting and that Emily is an adult who can make her own decisions. My friends are divided. Some say I did the right thing by standing up for my sister, while others say I should have swallowed my pride for the sake of family. Emily hasn't spoken to me directly since I told her I wouldn't come to the wedding. She posts vague messages on social media about how people sometimes prioritize themselves over love, which I suspect are about me. I know my decision sounds extreme to some. I know it will hurt my sister, and I hate that. But I cannot, in good conscience, celebrate a union where I feel she is being undermined and controlled. I worry that my absence will only make things worse, that she'll see me as an antagonist instead of someone who genuinely cares. I've considered attending without speaking to Jason, but I fear my presence would still be seen as endorsement. I've also thought about writing her a letter to explain my perspective, but I don't know if she would read it or if it would just cause more conflict. I'm now caught in this moral dilemma. Support my sister in attending a wedding that seems unhealthy, or stay away to protect her and myself from what I see as an unhealthy dynamic. I have tried multiple times to have open conversations, but Jason always turns it into a power play, and Emily seems to be choosing not to see it. I feel helpless, frustrated, and guilty, and I'm not sure if I'm the asshole for refusing to attend. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé. Character count, 6,427 if you want. I can also create a version that hits closer to 7,000 characters with extra details, inner monologue, and interactions for an even more popular Reddit story feel. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to let my sister name her baby after me, even though she thinks it's a family tradition. This all started about 6 months ago when my sister, 28F, announced that she and her husband, 30M, were expecting their first child. I'm 26F, and I have always been close with my sister, so naturally, I was excited for her. We've always shared a kind of complicated but deep sibling bond. Lots of teasing and sarcasm growing up, but also the type of relationship where we can vent for hours about everything from jobs to relationships. Anyway, after the initial excitement of her pregnancy announcement, she invited me over one evening to discuss baby stuff. I assumed she meant clothes, nursery ideas, or maybe registry planning. What actually happened was a whole conversation about names, and I quickly realized this wasn't going to be ordinary. She told me that she and her husband had been talking about names and decided they wanted to honor me by naming their baby after me. At first, I laughed because it seemed like a joke. She was dead serious. She said something along the lines of, "It's kind of a family tradition. The oldest sibling's name gets passed down to the next generation, and you've always been so great, so we want our kid to carry on your name." Here's the thing. My name is not a family name. It has never been used by relatives before, and honestly, it's not exactly common or easy to spell. But more importantly, I just don't feel comfortable with this. My name feels very much like my identity, and I don't want it borrowed, especially by someone who's now my peer's child. To me, naming someone else's kid after me without my consent felt like erasing the boundaries between us. I tried to explain this gently. I said, "I'm really honored you think so highly of me, but my name is, well, mine. It's a part of who I am. I don't think I can be comfortable with it being used for someone else, especially my niece or nephew. Can we think of another way to honor me?" She froze, and then she got upset. She started saying that this was ridiculous, that she had a right to honor family members in whatever way she wanted, and that I was being selfish. I was honestly shocked. I tried to keep calm, pointing out that honoring someone could be done in countless ways that didn't involve literally giving my name to a baby. I suggested maybe a middle name, or even a nickname or something symbolic in a scrapbook or nursery decor. She wasn't having it. Over the next few weeks, our conversations about the baby became tense. She kept bringing up the name indirectly, saying things like, "Well, maybe it's fine, but I really feel like it should be the name." Ich stood firm. I explained that this was important to me and that I couldn't compromise on it. Finally, she exploded. She called me controlling and overly dramatic and accused me of ruining her excitement. She then went on social media and posted a long story about how her amazing sister wouldn't let her honor her in the way she wanted, which left me feeling mortified and attacked. I didn't respond publicly. A few weeks later, I learned that she and her husband had decided to name the baby something else. She still looks visibly upset whenever I bring it up, and she's been cold toward me. Family gatherings are now strained because apparently I ruined the naming tradition and have been labeled as the sibling who is too sensitive. Even my parents have given me subtle looks like I overreacted. I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. On one hand, I feel strongly that no one should take my personal name without my consent. On the other hand, my sister thinks she's honoring me and is genuinely upset. I tried compromise and even offered alternative ways to honor me, but she refuses. I feel like I'm caught in a weird moral situation. I don't want to hurt my sister, but I also don't want to feel like my identity is being appropriated. Is this really me being selfish, or is it reasonable for me to set this boundary? I would like some perspective because I'm genuinely torn between protecting myself and maintaining a close relationship with my sister. AITA for refusing to let my sister bring her new boyfriend to my wedding even though my parents are pushing me to? So, here's the situation. I, 28F, am getting married in 6 months, and wedding planning has been a lot, to say the least. My fiancé, 30M, let's call him Ryan, and I are doing a fairly small, intimate wedding, about 70 people total, because we both hate huge crowds and just want a day with people who really matter to us. I've always dreamed of a wedding where everyone actually knows each other, not just a random cousin of a distant aunt. Here's the issue. My younger sister, Emma, 25F, started dating a new guy about 2 months ago, and things have been moving fast. Honestly, I like her, and I like her happiness, but this guy, let's call him Tyler, makes me uneasy. He's charming at first glance, but the more I've seen him interact with family, the more red flags I notice. He's very controlling over Emma. She cancels plans with friends if he's annoyed. He makes passive-aggressive comments if she doesn't respond to his texts fast enough, and he seems generally dismissive of anyone outside their bubble. 2 weekends ago, my parents came over and casually brought up the wedding guest list. My mom mentioned that she really hoped Emma would bring Tyler, and it kind of spiraled from there. She said, "It wouldn't be fair to exclude him. She's been serious about him for weeks." I told them honestly that I'm not comfortable inviting someone who I barely know, especially someone whose behavior I find questionable. My dad argued that I was being too rigid and that the wedding should be about including family and their partners. I tried to explain that Ryan and I intentionally kept the wedding small, and part of that decision was to ensure we had people who fit into our vision of the day. I told them if I start inviting every person someone is dating, I could end up with a wedding double the size we want. But they weren't having it. My mom got emotional and said, "You're being unreasonable. He's a part of Emma's life now, and she'll be upset if he's not there." I ended up having a private conversation with Emma. I tried to be kind but firm. I said, "I love you and I want you there, but I'm not inviting Tyler. The wedding is small, and I don't feel like I know him well enough to include him." She got quiet for a moment and then said, "So, basically, you don't like me being happy?" That stung because that was never my intention, but I didn't budge. I also mentioned that I hoped she would still come and enjoy the day herself. She said she'd think about it and left. After that, my parents doubled down. They called me multiple times over a week, trying different angles, guilt, reasoning, even subtle threats about family drama if I didn't change my mind. Ryan was supportive but stressed because it's putting me in the middle of a family feud, which I didn't want at all. Here's where it escalated. Emma sent me a message saying she's considering not coming if Tyler isn't invited, and she asked me why I don't like him. I tried to explain again that it's not personal, but about the size and intimacy of the wedding. She said I was being selfish, and it hurt because I've always tried to support her choices. The tension has reached the point where my parents are talking about boycotting the wedding if Tyler isn't included, and they keep hinting that if Emma doesn't come, it'll ruin family relationships. Ryan keeps telling me to stick to my guns, but I'm starting to feel like everyone is against me, and part of me worries I'm being unreasonable. I feel stuck. On one hand, I don't want to invite someone I barely know and whose presence could disrupt the atmosphere I want. On the other hand, I don't want to alienate my sister or cause my parents to be upset, especially on a day that's supposed to be about joy. My friends say I'm completely within my rights to not invite him and that my parents and sister are being dramatic, but I can't help but feel guilty. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister bring her new boyfriend to my wedding, even though my parents are pressuring me to include him. Character count, 6,341 if you want. I can also write an even longer, more detailed version hitting closer to 7,000 characters with extra scenes, messages, and inner monologues for more dramatic Reddit-style engagement. Do you want me to do that? AITA for confronting my sister about her parenting in front of my family and causing a huge argument. I, 32F, have a younger sister, Emily, 28F, who has always been a little difficult to deal with. Growing up, she was the golden child in our family, always praised for her grades, her athletic achievements, and later, for her career milestones. I, on the other hand, was more low-key and independent, which sometimes caused tension with my parents because they seemed to expect me to compete in the same way as Emily. Despite this, we've generally had a decent relationship as adults, though I sometimes feel like she has a superiority complex. Emily has a 5-year-old son, Liam. She's a stay-at-home mom and, in my opinion, has been somewhat overprotective and controlling with him. She schedules his entire day down to the minute, and if he cries or gets upset, she often punishes him for disrupting the schedule rather than trying to understand why he's upset. I have expressed concern about this in private conversations with her in the past, and she always brushes me off, saying, "You don't understand, he needs structure, or I know what's best for my child." I recently moved back to my hometown after a job change, and I've been staying with my parents for a few weeks while I get settled. Emily and Liam visit frequently, and that's where the problem escalated. During one visit, Liam was playing with my dog and accidentally knocked over a vase, shattering it. I immediately rushed to make sure he was okay and told him accidents happen. Emily came in, visibly frustrated, and scolded him loudly, calling him careless and irresponsible. I tried to calm her down and suggested she handle it differently, but she snapped at me, saying, "Don't interfere, this is my child, not yours." I let it go that time, but the situation kept repeating itself. Every time Liam did something normal for a 5-year-old, like spilling juice or throwing a tantrum, Emily would respond with a harsh reprimand. She seemed more concerned with maintaining control than teaching him. My parents have noticed this too and have expressed quiet concern, but no one has ever said anything directly to Emily because she tends to get defensive and argumentative. Last weekend, we had a family dinner at my parents' house. Liam was playing in the living room, and at one point he got upset because another cousin grabbed a toy from him. He started crying, and Emily immediately raised her voice at him, calling him selfish and threatening to put him in his room. I could feel my blood boiling. I know it's not my child, and I know I don't have parental authority over him, but I also couldn't just sit there. I calmly but firmly told Emily, "I think you're being too harsh. He's 5. He's learning how to interact with other kids. You can correct him without shaming him." Emily froze and then yelled, "How dare you tell me how to parent my child in front of everyone? You have no idea what you're talking about. Liam is MY's son, not yours." My parents tried to intervene, but I felt like I had to speak my mind. I said that she was creating an environment where Liam might start associating mistakes with fear and shame, which is not healthy, and that I couldn't stand by while he was being emotionally punished. The room got silent, and Emily started crying. She accused me of undermining her as a mother and humiliating her in front of the family. I tried to explain that my intention wasn't to embarrass her, but to speak up for Liam. The argument escalated quickly. My dad told me I shouldn't have said anything and that it was her house, her rules. My mom, however, quietly told me she thought I was right, but didn't want to get involved in the confrontation. Emily left with Liam in tears, saying she never wanted to see me again, and I stayed behind feeling both angry and guilty. Since then, the rest of my family has been divided. Some agree with me and say that I was standing up for Liam, while others think I overstepped and caused unnecessary drama. I understand that parents have the right to discipline their children as they see fit, but I also feel like emotional abuse is not discipline, and I couldn't stay silent. I keep replaying the situation in my head and wondering if I handled it the right way. Maybe I should have talked to Emily privately instead of confronting her in front of everyone. But at the same time, she often ignores private advice and repeats the same patterns. I wanted Liam to see that someone was on his side and to feel safe, but now my sister hates me and family gatherings are tense. So, Reddit, AITA for confronting my sister about her parenting in front of my family? Should I have stayed silent even though I was worried about how she treats her son? Or was speaking up justified, even if it caused a major fight? Character count 6,586 if you want. I can write 2 more variants in a similar viral style that are even longer and could plausibly get high engagement on Reddit. This one is already in the sweet spot of 6,000 to 7,000 characters. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to help my brother with a financial situation, even though it's tearing my family apart? I, 32M, have always had a complicated relationship with my younger brother, Jake, 28M. We grew up in a pretty middle-class family, and while I was always the responsible one, Jake has a history of making impulsive decisions that land him in trouble. I've tried to be supportive over the years, but there's a line where I feel I have to step back for my own sanity. Recently, something happened that has completely divided my family, and I can't figure out if I'm actually in the wrong. A couple of months ago, Jake called me in a panic. He had invested in a surefire business opportunity that he claimed would triple his money in a year. I was immediately skeptical because the details sounded shady, but Jake was desperate. Long story short, the business collapsed within weeks, and he lost a significant amount of money. To make matters worse, he had taken out a personal loan that he now can't pay back. He called me asking for help. Specifically, he wanted me to co-sign another loan so he could pay off the first one and essentially reset his financial situation. I told him straight up that I could not do that. I have my own responsibilities, a mortgage, and I'm saving for my family's future. Co-signing a loan is risky, and given his track record, I would almost certainly be financially liable if things went wrong again. He got very upset and started yelling at me, accusing me of not being a brother and abandoning him when he needed me most. The argument got worse over the next few days. Jake started going to my parents, my extended family, and even some mutual friends, trying to rally them against me. My parents were shocked that I wouldn't help, and my mom, in particular, was very emotional, saying things like, "Family sticks together no matter what," and "You're being cruel to your brother." I tried to explain that helping him financially would be enabling him to repeat the same mistakes, but it didn't seem to matter. A few weeks later, Jake sent me a very long email detailing every time he had helped me in the past and implying that I owed him this because of it. He mentioned things like lending me money in college, which I did pay back in full, and helping me move apartments. I felt like this was manipulative, but I didn't respond. Things came to a head at a family gathering last weekend. My parents asked me directly why I hadn't helped Jake, and I explained my reasoning calmly. Jake immediately started shouting across the table, calling me selfish and ungrateful. My younger sister, 26F, sided with him, saying I should have put my brother first, and that family means you sometimes make sacrifices. My parents were visibly disappointed in me, and the tension was palpable. After the gathering, I texted Jake, trying to de-escalate things. I told him I would support him in other ways, helping him budget, finding legitimate financial advice, and even helping him look for extra work. But I would not co-sign a loan. He responded by saying he felt betrayed and that he couldn't see me as a brother anymore. He also hinted that if I didn't help, he might reconsider family ties with our parents, which feels manipulative and emotionally exhausting. My friends are split on this. Some say I'm being rational and protecting myself, while others say I'm being cold and putting money over family. I've tried to talk to my parents, but they're disappointed and think I'm not being supportive enough. I feel guilty constantly because I can see how stressed and desperate he is, but at the same time, I'm terrified of enabling him and potentially ruining my own financial stability. I want to be a good brother and a good son, but I also don't want to be seen as irresponsible or careless with my money. I'm stuck in this situation where every option seems to hurt someone, and I don't know if I'm morally wrong or just being cautious. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to co-sign a loan for my brother, even though it's tearing my family apart. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's behavior. I, 28F, have always been extremely close to my younger sister, Lily, 25F. We grew up in a small town, did everything together, and even shared a room until I moved out for college. Our relationship has had normal sibling ups and downs, but overall, we've been incredibly tight. About 6 months ago, Lily introduced me to her fiancé, Tom, 27M. At first, I tried to be welcoming. I wanted to support her and get to know him. However, I quickly noticed some red flags. Tom has this way of subtly controlling conversations and making small comments that are meant to undermine others. It started with minor things, like insisting he knew more about movies or music than anyone else, and it escalated to him openly questioning my career choices during dinner one evening. I'm an architect, and during a casual conversation about design trends, he interrupted to say, "I don't think women are cut out for architecture. It's a demanding field, and they usually drop out after a few years." I was shocked and didn't respond in a moment because I didn't want to start a fight, but I mentioned it to Lily later, and she laughed it off and said I was overreacting. After that, things started to feel worse. Tom would comment on how Lily looked or what she wore, always under the guise of helpful advice, but it always came off controlling. He also made passive-aggressive remarks about my family during gatherings, especially about our parents' lifestyle choices. I've never been confrontational, but I started noticing my anxiety spike whenever I knew I'd see him. The tipping point came about 2 months ago. Lily invited me to a small dinner to discuss the wedding plans. Tom was there, and as we were talking about seating arrangements, he said, "I think it's better if certain people aren't near each other because they might bring bad energy." I asked for clarification, and he laughed, saying, like people who can't handle a conversation without getting offended. It's mostly your sister's side, but your family might be okay. I was furious. It basically implied my family would ruin the wedding without directly saying it. I tried to keep my cool, but Lily just nodded along and said, "Yeah, he's right. Maybe we'll just move things around." At that moment, I realized that if I went to her wedding, I would be expected to sit quietly while Tom made these kinds of comments and subtly controlled everything. I told Lily I wasn't comfortable attending. She initially pleaded with me, saying it would mean a lot to her, but I stuck to my decision. We argued for several hours, and she accused me of being selfish, immature, and unwilling to support her happiness. I tried explaining that my issue wasn't with her wedding or her being happy, but with Tom's behavior, which I felt was toxic and controlling, and that I didn't want to be around that dynamic. She told me that I was overreacting and that I was blowing things out of proportion. Since then, I've spoken to a few close friends and even some extended family. Some think I'm in the right for protecting my mental health, but others argue that skipping my sister's wedding is extreme and that I should put my discomfort aside for one day to support her. My parents are disappointed. They don't outright tell me I'm wrong, but they've implied that I'm letting an outsider ruin the family bond and that my absence would be embarrassing for Lily. I've tried to explain that it's not about being rude. It's about not wanting to expose myself to someone who is consistently disrespectful and manipulative, but no one seems to take it seriously. I've also started noticing that Lily has been changing. She used to be assertive and confident, but now she defers to Tom in almost every conversation, even about things she used to be passionate about. I tried having a heart-to-heart with her a few days ago, expressing my concern for how she's being treated, but she got defensive and told me I was projecting my feelings onto them and trying to sabotage her happiness. It was heartbreaking because I feel like I've lost my sister to someone I don't trust. Here's the kicker. A mutual friend told me that during a recent engagement party, Tom openly mocked me in front of several guests, joking about how I must have a dramatic reaction to everything and that some people are just too sensitive to handle normal conversation. Lily laughed along. That's when I finally decided there's no way I can attend the wedding. I don't want to be in an environment where my presence is a punchline or where I feel unsafe emotionally. I know it sounds extreme to completely skip such an important event in my sister's life. I've tried to negotiate, like attending only the ceremony, staying for a short time, or avoiding Tom. But she says it's all or nothing. I can't stand the thought of being around him for hours while she ignores everything I'm trying to show her about his behavior. I haven't told anyone else exactly why I'm skipping the wedding because I don't want to create drama, but my absence is going to be very noticeable, and I'm already anticipating backlash from family and friends. I feel torn because I love my sister more than anything, but I also feel like I have to protect myself from someone who has repeatedly disrespected me. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because I can't stand being around her fiancé. AITA for telling my sister she can't bring her boyfriend to my wedding after he treated my husband to be horribly in the past. So, some context first. I, 28F, am getting married to my fiancé, Daniel, 30M, in about 6 months. Everything has been going smoothly with the planning, and we're really excited. My sister, Lauren, 26F, has always been a little dramatic, but I've mostly let her antics slide over the years. She's been dating her boyfriend, Trevor, 27M, for a few months. Now, I say a few months, but the actual situation with Trevor goes a bit deeper. Here's where it gets messy. About a year ago, before Daniel and I were engaged, I hosted a small birthday dinner for Daniel with just close friends. Lauren invited Trevor to that dinner without asking me. I wasn't super thrilled, but whatever, I thought maybe she wanted him to meet my friends. That dinner was a disaster. Trevor made multiple rude comments about Daniel's career. He's a graphic designer, his hobbies, and even his family. At one point, he actually said Daniel wasn't ambitious enough and would never make it in the real world. My friends were visibly uncomfortable, and Daniel was quiet the whole night, which was unusual for him. I ended up walking Trevor to the door and politely asking him not to say anything further like that. Lauren was upset that I embarrassed her boyfriend and hasn't forgiven me for it. Fast forward to now. Daniel and I are engaged, and Lauren knows that the wedding is going to be in a couple of months. She recently told me she wants Trevor to come to the wedding, and I said no. I tried to explain gently that we don't think it's appropriate, given how he treated Daniel before. Lauren flipped. She accused me of holding grudges and being unreasonable because it's been a year. She even said, people change, and I reminded her that this isn't just about a small argument. It was about him directly insulting my fiancé in front of people. Lauren then went on a bit of a guilt trip, saying that I'm being selfish and that our wedding should be about family coming together. I told her that our wedding is also about making sure Daniel and I feel comfortable on our special day, and having someone who openly disrespected him in the past does not contribute to that. She called me controlling, and at this point, our mom got involved. Mom tried to mediate and suggested maybe Trevor could come if he apologized, but Lauren claims he doesn't need to apologize because nothing happened and that Daniel is too sensitive. I then try to compromise, suggesting that Lauren could come without Trevor. She refused and started saying things like, "Fine, I guess I'm not going to your wedding then. You're making me choose between family and my boyfriend, and I can't believe you'd put him through this." I told her that I would be disappointed if she chose not to come, but I also can't compromise the comfort of my fiancé on our wedding day. Now, the situation has escalated further. Lauren has started posting vague messages on social media about how some people care more about grudges than family, and has told mutual friends that I'm being unreasonable and controlling of my own family. Some of my friends have reached out asking if I'm really in the wrong here, which is why I'm writing this. I honestly feel like I'm not asking too much. Daniel's comfort matters, and it's not like I'm banning all of Lauren's friends, just someone who has openly insulted my partner. But at the same time, Lauren is my sister, and I hate that she's so upset. Daniel and I have talked about it extensively. He says he doesn't care if she comes with Trevor or not, but he does not want Trevor there because he genuinely remembers the way he was treated and doesn't want to relive that at the wedding. He also said he doesn't want me to stress over it either. I'm torn because I don't want to cause a permanent rift with my sister, but at the same time, I don't think I should be forced to allow someone who has disrespected my fiancé to attend my wedding. Am I the asshole for refusing to let Lauren bring Trevor to the wedding? After I told her no, the tension in my family has been palpable. Our mom seems frustrated with me. My dad hasn't really said anything, and Lauren has been texting me passive-aggressively. Part of me is thinking maybe I should just let Trevor come to avoid the drama. But the other part thinks that this is a slippery slope. What if he insults other guests or Daniel again? I honestly just want a peaceful day. So, Reddit, AITA here. Characters, 6,471. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay at my house after an argument about her child at home. I, 32F, have been close with my younger sister, Emily, 28F, for most of our lives, but things have been tense over the past year, and I'm starting to wonder if I'm the asshole in this situation. I feel like I need to lay out all the context so you can understand why I made the choices I did. Our parents passed away about 5 years ago. They left behind a house that Emily and I grew up in. After they died, we decided to sell it, but it turned out the house was worth more than we expected. We agreed to split the proceeds evenly. I moved into a smaller apartment, and Emily moved in with her fiancé, Ben. Fast forward to last year. Emily started planning her wedding, and she was really pushing for me to host some of the pre-wedding events at my place. I tried to accommodate, but my apartment is small and I work from home. I explained that having big gatherings there wasn't practical. She got upset and said I was being selfish and anti-family. I felt frustrated because I was already giving my time and energy to help with planning in other ways like designing invitations and helping with guest lists. The situation escalated when she and Ben announced that they wanted to stay at my place for a weekend while visiting the city for wedding-related errands. My apartment is tiny, essentially a studio, and I barely have room for myself. I told her I couldn't accommodate them. She said I was being dramatic and that she just needed a place to crash for 2 nights. I offered to help them find a nearby Airbnb, but she insisted it should be at my place because it's more convenient and free. Things got heated when we started talking about the child at home. Emily said she felt like I was hoarding the money from the sale and that I had won by moving into my own place while she and Ben had to make sacrifices. I explained that we had split the money evenly and that my living situation had nothing to do with anyone winning. She accused me of being selfish and implied that I didn't care about family traditions. At this point, I drew a line. I told her clearly that she and Ben could not stay at my apartment. I also said that I needed some space from her until after the wedding because the constant arguments were stressing me out. She called me cold and accused me of ruining our relationship over money and space issues. The situation got even worse when she invited a bunch of mutual friends over to talk about the issue without telling me. They all assumed I was in the wrong because Emily framed it as me refusing to help her and Ben. I tried explaining my side, but most people sided with her, saying I should just let them stay for a couple of nights. It's not a big deal. I felt completely blindsided and unfairly judged. Things came to a head last weekend. Emily and Ben showed up at my apartment unannounced. I was at home, working, and they rang the bell multiple times. I opened the door and told them again that they could not stay. Ben got defensive and started listing all the reasons why they deserved to stay and implied that I was being selfish. Emily started crying and said I was destroying what little relationship we had left. I firmly told them they needed to leave, and when they didn't comply right away, I called a friend to come help mediate. Eventually, they left, but Emily sent me a long text afterwards saying I was the worst sister in the world and that I didn't care about family. Since then, I've been feeling torn. Some of my friends say I did the right thing and that it's my home and my boundaries, while others think I overreacted and should have just let them crash for 2 nights to avoid drama. I honestly feel like I've tried to compromise in every other way, but whenever I say no, it turns into a huge argument where I'm portrayed as the villain. I'm worried that Emily's resentment will carry into the wedding, and I don't want to be around constant tension. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister and her fiancé stay at my apartment, even though it's causing a rift in our relationship. Background context, I should note. My apartment is a studio, maybe 400 square feet. There literally isn't space for guests without it feeling extremely cramped. I've contributed to the wedding in other ways, including designing decorations, helping organize schedules, and even giving financial gifts. Emily has a history of framing situations to make herself look like the victim, especially in family matters. I've tried to set boundaries in the past, but she tends to push back hard when she feels inconvenienced. I'm not sure how to proceed. I love my sister, but I also love my own space and sanity. AITA for refusing to help my sister with her wedding after she disrespected my boundaries for years. I, 32F, have always been the responsible, quiet type in my family. My younger sister, Emily, 28F, has been a little more chaotic, for lack of a better word. Growing up, she often borrowed money from me and my parents, sometimes paying it back, sometimes not. I never minded too much because I love her, but it's worth noting that she has a history of being reckless and expecting others to pick up the pieces. Fast forward to now. Emily got engaged last year to her fiancé, Mark, 30M. From the beginning, she made it clear that she wanted a dream wedding and expected me to be heavily involved. Normally, I'm happy to support family events, but she has a pattern of pushing boundaries, and I wasn't sure how much I could handle. The first red flag came when she asked me to co-sign a loan for the wedding venue. I politely declined, saying I wasn't comfortable taking on financial liability for something I might not have control over. She was visibly upset, but I thought she would let it go. Instead, she began dropping hints at family gatherings about how she's sacrificing everything for the wedding, implying that I wasn't supportive enough. Things escalated when she started assigning me tasks. First, it was something small like helping her pick invitations. Then she asked me to handle RSVPs, organize a bachelorette party, and even manage her guest list. I reminded her that I had a full-time job and other commitments, and that I was willing to help in small ways, but I wasn't going to take on the role of wedding planner. She reacted badly and accused me of being lazy and unsisterly. The breaking point came a few weeks ago. Emily asked me to host her bridal shower at my apartment. My apartment is small and barely fits my own furniture comfortably, and I was already stressed with work. I told her that my space wasn't suitable and suggested an alternative venue. She refused, insisting it had to be at my place. When I stood my ground, she got angry and said, "If you really cared about me, you'd do this for me." That's when I realized she wasn't respecting my boundaries at all. I sent her a long message explaining that I love her, but I cannot take on all of these responsibilities. I outlined what I could help with, like going dress shopping with her or offering moral support, but I was not going to host events in my home, co-sign loans, or manage the wedding. Emily blew up. She called me selfish and manipulative, saying that I was ruining her special day and that no one else in the family would help. My parents tried to mediate, and I thought maybe I could compromise a little. I offered to attend vendor meetings and help with minor things here and there, but she still wasn't satisfied. She even hinted that she might reconsider inviting me to the wedding at all if I didn't step up. Now, the situation has gotten even more complicated. A week ago, Emily told me she booked my apartment anyway for the bridal shower without my consent. She assumed I wouldn't refuse her friends and family if they all showed up. I was furious. I called her and said that if anyone came over, I would not be responsible for it, and that she was trespassing. She accused me of being dramatic and told me I was trying to control her happiness. My parents are split. My dad thinks I'm justified, while my mom thinks I'm being too rigid and should let her have this one thing. My friends are also divided. Some say I should step up for my sister, and others say she's taking advantage of me. I honestly feel like I'm being punished for setting boundaries. I'm willing to support her in ways that don't compromise my life, but she seems to think that love means sacrificing everything, including my time, energy, and finances. I don't want to attend a wedding that has already caused me this much stress, but I also don't want to alienate my sister completely. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to take on responsibilities for my sister's wedding that she's trying to impose on me, especially after years of pushing my boundaries in other ways. AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend move in with us after she broke up with him. So this is going to be a long one, so bear with me. I, 29F, live with my younger sister, Lily, 24F, in a two-bedroom apartment we've had for about 3 years now. Our parents live out of state, and Lily moved in with me after college to save money while she looked for a job in her city. We've always been close, and our dynamic is very much roommates but also sisters, which mostly works out. A few months ago, Lily started dating a guy named Mark, 27M. He seemed fine at first, charming, funny, and seemed genuinely interested in her. We met him a few times, and I wasn't super impressed but didn't dislike him either. Lily was happy, and I figured that was what mattered. Things seemed normal for the first few months, but then I noticed a few things that started bothering me. First, Mark started showing up at the apartment unannounced. Sometimes he'd come over during the day when Lily was at work, sometimes in the evening when I had friends over. He'd just let himself in and expect me to entertain him or make him something to eat. I mentioned it to Lily once, gently, and she said he was just comfortable and that I shouldn't be so uptight. I let it slide because I didn't want to start drama and he hadn't done anything outright wrong yet. Then, one night, Lily and I had a serious conversation. She said she wanted to take her relationship with Mark to the next level, which to me sounded like moving in together. I asked if she meant with me as well, and she said yes, that she thought it would be fine if he moved in temporarily until they figured out a place for themselves. I was hesitant, but didn't outright say no. I wanted to see how it would go, thinking it would be a short-term situation. Mark moved in about 2 weeks later. The first couple of days were manageable, but soon things started spiraling. He never helped with chores, left dirty dishes everywhere, and had this habit of using our bathroom for hours while singing loudly. He also started leaving his stuff in Lily's room and mine. I work from home, so I spent a lot of time in the apartment, which made me increasingly uncomfortable. I mentioned a few times that he should clean up after himself, and Lily defended him every time, saying he's not used to living with people. Give him time. A week after moving in, Mark lost his job. That's fine, it happens. But he immediately started asking Lily to pay for his expenses, including his phone bill, groceries, and even streaming services. He also started commenting that our apartment was cozy but cramped, and subtly implied that I should move out if it bothered me. I started feeling like this wasn't temporary and that I was being pushed out of my own home. Then came the breaking point. Lily and Mark got into a huge fight one evening because Mark said he didn't want to work and expected Lily to financially support both of them. She was upset. He stormed out, and the next morning he called her crying, saying he had nowhere to go. Lily immediately turned to me and asked if he could stay at the apartment just for a few days until he figured something out. At this point, I said no. I told her that I couldn't have him staying here after everything that had happened, especially since he had been disrespectful and not contributed to anything. Lily got really angry and accused me of choosing him over her, saying I didn't care about her feelings. She said he had nowhere else to go and that I was being unreasonable. I stood my ground, explaining that I wasn't kicking him out in the middle of the night. I was saying he needed to find his own place and that it wasn't fair to me to put up with his behavior. This turned into a full-blown argument. Lily said I was being a bad sister and that I was selfish for not letting him stay. She also threatened that our relationship would be strained if I didn't just let him crash for a bit. I tried to reason with her, saying that boundaries are important and that this wasn't about picking sides. It was about me feeling safe and comfortable in my own home. She left that night to stay with a friend, leaving me in a weird, tense silence at the apartment. After that, Mark texted me, asking if he could come over and talk things out, and I ignored it. Lily has been distant, and I get the sense she's venting to mutual friends, framing me as the villain in this story. Some of our friends have even messaged me saying, maybe you should just let him stay, she's really upset. But honestly, I feel like I'd be enabling someone who is manipulative and disrespectful if I did. Since the incident, I've been walking on eggshells whenever Lily is around. She's staying with friends, but we have to figure out living arrangements soon. I don't want to move out, and I also don't want Mark in my home. I feel like my sister should respect my boundaries, especially since this is my apartment too. I've tried to explain that multiple times, but she's acting like I'm the bad guy. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister's ex-boyfriend move in with us after she broke up with him, even though she says he has nowhere else to go. AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend stay in my house after he got arrested. This all started about 6 months ago. I, 29F, have a younger sister, Emily, 24F, who's always been a little reckless, let's say. She's sweet, but she's made some questionable life choices over the years. She recently started dating this guy, Jordan, 27M, and at first, I tried to be supportive because she was happy. But it didn't take long for me to notice red flags. Jordan seemed charming at first, but he had a way of manipulating situations and people, especially Emily. A few months into their relationship, I started noticing that Emily's moods were shifting drastically. She became anxious about small things, and she'd cancel plans with friends last minute because Jordan wanted her to stay in. I tried to talk to her about it, gently, but she insisted everything was fine and that I was overreacting. I let it go because I didn't want to push her away. About 3 months ago, Emily came to me, panicked. Jordan had been arrested after a big altercation at a bar. He didn't tell her the full story, but apparently he had gotten into a fight with another guy, and the police had taken him in. Emily was terrified that he would be homeless after his release, and she begged me to let him stay at my place temporarily. I hesitated because I didn't know him that well, and the last thing I wanted was to bring trouble into my home. I also know from her past that Emily tends to get swept up in chaos, so I was cautious. I told her no. I explained that I couldn't let someone with a recent violent arrest stay at my house, even temporarily. I offered to help her find a safe, legal place for him, maybe a hostel or a friend, but I refused to put my safety and my home at risk. Emily broke down crying and said I was being unreasonable, that Jordan had changed and just needed a safe place to get back on his feet. 2 days later, Jordan showed up at my door unannounced. I was shocked and immediately told him he could not stay. He tried to argue that Emily had told him I would help, and Emily herself was standing behind him, pleading with me. I stayed firm and called a friend to come over for backup, just to make sure things didn't escalate. They left after a heated argument, and Emily hasn't really spoken to me since. The story doesn't end there. A few weeks later, I started getting messages from mutual friends and some of Emily's colleagues. Apparently, Jordan had continued to cause trouble, showing up at places uninvited, yelling at people, and even getting into minor legal trouble again. Emily had been apologizing on his behalf to everyone, but never mentioned what actually happened to me. A few days ago, my parents called me to tell me that Emily was furious and refusing to speak to me. She claims I abandoned her and Jordan when he needed help, and that I didn't support her relationship. My parents are upset with me too, because they think I should have been more accommodating. I tried to explain that it's not about not supporting Emily. It's about not endangering my home and safety for someone I barely know and who has a history of violence. Now, Emily is posting on social media, sharing how my sister didn't have my back, and getting friends involved, tagging me in posts that are obviously meant to make me look bad. My parents are torn because they understand my point, but also feel like family should support each other unconditionally. I feel like I'm in an impossible situation. I don't want to cut Emily out of my life, but I also can't compromise my own boundaries. Jordan is unpredictable and potentially dangerous, and I don't want to deal with the consequences of letting him in. At the same time, Emily sees me as the villain in all of this. I'm trying to figure out if I overreacted or if I was right to refuse. I think people should be allowed to set boundaries, but the backlash has been intense, and I'm questioning myself. I never denied Emily help in general. I even offered to help her find a safe alternative for him, but apparently that's not enough for her. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister's recently arrested boyfriend stay in my house. I want to support my sister, but I also have to protect myself and my home. I feel like there's no way to do both without making her upset. Character count, 6,504, white heavy checkmark word count. 1,139 white heavy checkmark if you want. I can draft another version that's even more viral Reddit style, with extra drama and subtle moral ambiguity. It would push it closer to the edge of emotional engagement that tends to rack up comments. Do you want me to do that next? AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay in my house after he insulted my family. even though she thinks I overreacted. I, 28F, have a younger sister, Emily, 25F, and we've always been close growing up, even though we had our fair share of fights. Our family is tight-knit, but also really protective of one another. I live in a small house that I inherited from our grandparents, and over the years, I've made it my sanctuary. I've always welcomed friends and family, but I have certain boundaries because of past experiences. Emily recently got engaged to a man named Jake, 27M. I had met him a few times before the engagement, and while I didn't dislike him, there was always this subtle arrogance about him that made me wary. I chalked it up to first impressions, figuring maybe he was just nervous. Last week, Emily told me they were visiting my town for a weekend, and she asked if Jake could stay at my house since they didn't want to book a hotel. I was hesitant, but agreed initially, thinking it would be easier than her stressing over hotel costs. Emily assured me he was different now and had changed since I met him months ago. The first night was fine. Jake was polite and tried to make small talk. However, things quickly deteriorated on the second day. We were having brunch at my place, and Emily was in the kitchen making coffee. Jake started complaining loudly about my old-fashioned furniture and how my house looked stuck in the 90s. I tried to laugh it off and make a joke, but he kept going, saying things like, is this even clean? And who still uses these kinds of appliances? I was taken aback. I've always taken pride in my home, and my grandparents built it with their own hands. I told him calmly that the house was personal to me and my family, and he shouldn't insult it. He scoffed and said, "I'm just being honest. If this was my place, I'd have redecorated years ago." Emily quickly came in and whispered to him, "Don't start fights," but he just smirked and continued. Later that evening, Jake started making passive-aggressive remarks about my cooking. I had made a family recipe for dinner, and he said, I guess this is fine if you're used to eating bland food all the time." At this point, I was visibly upset. I told him he was being rude and unnecessary, and he laughed, saying, "Why are you so sensitive? It's just a joke." Emily tried to mediate, but she clearly wasn't as upset as I was. The breaking point came the next morning. Jake suggested that Emily and I should live more like modern people, and that my family traditions were outdated and boring. I lost my temper. I told him he could leave immediately if he couldn't respect my home and my family. Emily begged me to calm down, saying I was overreacting and that he didn't mean it that way. But he didn't apologize. Instead, he rolled his eyes and muttered under his breath that I was controlling and dramatic. I texted Emily later and said that I couldn't have him stay in my house any longer. I offered to help them find a hotel nearby, but I made it clear that he wasn't welcome under my roof. Emily was furious and called me multiple times, yelling that I embarrassed her and that I should just let him stay for the weekend. She accused me of being petty and ruining their visit. Our parents called me too. They said that while Jake may have been tactless, I should have just tolerated it for Emily's sake. I explained that his comments weren't small or accidental. They were constant, disrespectful, and insulting toward me and my family. They seemed to partially understand, but still said I might have overreacted. Since then, Emily has barely spoken to me. She keeps sending passive-aggressive texts like, "Hope you enjoyed being the bad guy this weekend," and "Family should stick together, but I guess not." I feel like I did the right thing by standing up for my home and boundaries, but part of me wonders if I really overreacted. So Reddit, AITA for kicking my sister's fiancé out and refusing to let him stay in my house after he insulted my family and me. Even though my sister thinks I overreacted. Character count, 6,356 if you want. I can also make a slightly longer, even more dramatic version that hits closer to 7,000 characters with more tension and dialogue. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to cover my brother's wedding after he refused to help with my medical expenses. 32F, come from a family that has always had a we all support each other mentality. My younger brother, Jake, 29M, and I have had a complicated relationship, mostly because he's always been more entitled and stubborn than anyone else in the family. That said, we generally got along well enough, and I thought we were close. About 6 months ago, I was in a car accident. It wasn't life-threatening, but I suffered some serious injuries that required surgery and months of physical therapy. Naturally, the bills started piling up. I work a decent job, but nothing that could handle tens of thousands of dollars in medical costs without causing severe financial strain. I reached out to my family for help, thinking that because we've always been there for each other, it would be no problem. My parents contributed what they could, and some cousins pitched in small amounts. I expected my brother to help at least a little, considering he makes significantly more money than I do. I sent him a message explaining my situation, and he responded with a single line. Sorry, can't help. You knew cars were dangerous when you drove one. I was shocked. Not only was it unsympathetic, it also felt dismissive. I pressed him gently, hoping he might reconsider, explaining that this wasn't about a handout. It was about family helping family when it's really needed. His response was even worse. He said he didn't owe me anything and that my financial situation was my problem. He also reminded me of how much money he's invested in his house and his wedding, implying that helping me would be a burden. I was hurt, angry, and honestly felt betrayed. Fast forward to last month, Jake announced his wedding. He and his fiancée have been planning for over a year, and from the looks of it, it's going to be an expensive event. He invited me and my parents, but included a note saying that the wedding and reception would be cash only, meaning that guests were expected to cover all costs related to attending, from travel to accommodations to participation fees for certain events. My parents were planning to go and were already budgeting for it. They encouraged me to go as well, saying it would be a good way to keep family peace. But I looked at the numbers. Between travel, lodging, and the events they were charging for, welcome dinner, rehearsal dinner, etc., attending would cost me roughly $2,000, a sum I could barely justify when I was still paying off medical bills. I reached out to Jake to explain that I couldn't afford to attend under these circumstances. His response was astonishing. He accused me of holding my medical situation over him and said, "If you really loved me, you'd find a way to make it. Families sacrifice for each other." I tried to reason with him, telling him that I had already sacrificed my financial stability due to medical expenses and that attending would be an additional burden I simply could not take on. He escalated, saying that I was selfish and that I was punishing him for not helping me when I needed it. At this point, my parents tried mediating, suggesting that maybe I could attend some parts of the wedding, like the ceremony, and skip the expensive events. I told them that the way the wedding was structured, I would still end up spending a significant amount just to be there and that it wasn't sustainable for me. They seemed sympathetic but didn't push further. Meanwhile, Jake started sending passive-aggressive texts, tagging me in social media posts about wedding planning, and posting pictures of extravagant preparations. I ignored them because I didn't want to engage in drama, but friends who saw the posts told me it looked like he was trying to shame me for not attending. The final straw came when one of his fiancée's relatives reached out to me, expressing surprise that I wasn't attending and implying that I was being difficult and selfish. I explained my situation, including the medical bills and his refusal to help, and they seemed to understand, but said it was likely Jake framing things differently for appearances. I told Jake directly that I would not be attending the wedding, and I emphasized that my decision was based purely on finances, not a lack of love or support. He then sent a message saying, "I can't believe you're choosing money over family. Don't bother showing up at future family events either. You made your choice." That message has made me second-guess our entire relationship. Since then, our family group chat has been icy. Some relatives side with Jake, saying I should have found a way to attend because weddings are a once-in-a-lifetime event. Others are quietly sympathetic but haven't openly confronted him. My parents have tried to remain neutral, which I understand, but it still hurts. I feel torn. On one hand, I have my financial reality, my medical bills, and my own mental health to consider. On the other hand, the way Jake has reacted makes me feel like I'm being unreasonable or ungrateful. I genuinely don't want to be estranged from my family, but I also can't justify risking financial ruin for a wedding that, frankly, feels like a test of loyalty rather than a celebration. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to cover my brother's wedding when he refused to help with my medical expenses? AITA for refusing to help my sister after she lost her job and expecting me to completely fund her lifestyle? I, 32M, have always been the responsible sibling. I grew up with my sister, Emily, 28F, in a family that wasn't wealthy, but also not struggling. Our parents worked hard, and they instilled in us the idea that you need to take responsibility for your own life. Emily, however, has always been more of a live-in-the-moment type. She's incredibly charming and outgoing, but she has a habit of making impulsive decisions without considering the long-term consequences. I'm not judging her personality. I just have a very different approach to life. A couple of years ago, Emily quit her stable office job because she said she wasn't happy and wanted to pursue her dream of becoming a lifestyle influencer. She made it sound so glamorous, but the reality was that she didn't have a plan or any savings. She tried to convince me that I should invest in her brand because she was going to be huge. I politely declined, explaining that I couldn't just give her money for a venture that had no guarantee of success. She seemed disappointed, but eventually moved on. Fast forward to 6 months ago, Emily lost her part-time job at a local boutique. She had been working there while trying to build her social media presence, but apparently she wasn't consistent enough, and her boss let her go. That's fine. Jobs end. What became a problem was that Emily started calling me multiple times a week, asking for money for rent, groceries, and just basic living expenses until she got back on her feet. At first, I helped her out a bit. I gave her $200 here and there, thinking it would tide her over for a week or two. But then it became clear that this was not going to be temporary. Emily started budgeting her life around my assistance. She would plan weekends out, book brunches, and even suggest trips to the beach, all while insisting she couldn't cover basic bills. When I expressed concern, she said, "You're my big brother. You should support me. I have a steady career, and I do fine financially, but I am not wealthy, and I have my own responsibilities. I pay off my mortgage, student loans, and other bills. I also contribute to my retirement fund and save for emergencies." I explained this to Emily, but she accused me of being selfish and said I never cared about her dreams. Things came to a head a few weeks ago. She texted me crying, saying she had to choose between paying rent or buying groceries. I told her I couldn't just hand her the money indefinitely, and that she needed to come up with a plan for herself. She reacted badly, saying that if I didn't help her, she didn't want to speak to me anymore. The conflict didn't stay private. Our parents got involved. They said I was being heartless and that I should support my sister because she's family. I tried explaining that supporting her doesn't mean enabling irresponsible behavior, but they argued that family comes first. Here's the thing. I'm not unsympathetic. I understand that losing a job is stressful and that making ends meet can be hard. I offered to help in other ways. I helped her draft resumes, gave advice on how to apply for unemployment benefits, and even helped her schedule appointments with career counselors. I said I would continue helping in ways that could actually improve her situation long term. But when it comes to giving her money for frivolous expenses or bailing her out every month, I draw the line. Emily is furious and refuses to talk to me. Our parents are upset with me, and my friends have said I might be overreacting. But I genuinely feel that if I keep giving her money, it will just reinforce the same pattern of dependency. I want her to succeed, but I also want her to learn to take responsibility for her life. I keep questioning myself because I do love my sister and I want her to be happy, but at the same time, I feel trapped between enabling her and letting her struggle to grow. I know families are supposed to help each other, but I also feel like there's a line between support and enabling. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to keep financially supporting my sister when she refuses to make a plan for her own future. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of a family secret I discovered. I, 28F, have always been close to my sister, Emma, 32F. Growing up, we were inseparable, but as adults, things have gotten more complicated. Emma has always been the planner and perfectionist, while I tend to be more laid back, which has led to some friction, but nothing too serious. Until recently. Emma got engaged about a year ago to a man named Mark, 35M. At first, I liked him. He seemed kind, well-mannered, and genuinely in love with Emma. Our parents seemed thrilled, too, and I was excited about the wedding. I even offered to help with some of the planning since Emma was juggling a demanding career. Things were fine, or at least I thought they were. About 3 months ago, while helping Emma with some wedding invites, I received a message from someone I didn't recognize. It was from Mark's ex, who I'll call Sarah. She was reaching out because she had heard we were close to Emma and wanted to warn me about Mark. I was skeptical at first, but Sarah claimed that Mark had a history of manipulating women and that he was still technically married to someone else in another state. The message included screenshots of legal documents, texts, and even photos of him with another woman that were dated as recently as 6 months ago. I was shocked. I didn't know what to do. I considered confronting Mark directly, but I was worried it might backfire and upset Emma before I had all the facts. Instead, I decided to do some discreet digging. I found that he had indeed filed for divorce, but the divorce was not finalized. On top of that, I found multiple online accounts and posts that suggested he had been romantically involved with other women while dating Emma. I was horrified and confused. I decided to confront Emma. I didn't want to keep secrets from her, and I felt like she deserved to know before making such a life-changing decision. When I told her everything I had discovered, she reacted in a way I didn't expect. She was furious, not at Mark, but at me. She accused me of trying to sabotage her relationship, of not trusting her judgment, and of blowing things out of proportion. She said she had known about Mark's past and that it didn't matter to her because she loved him and believed he had changed. I tried to explain that this wasn't about controlling her choices, but about potential fraud and the legal ramifications of marrying someone who isn't legally divorced yet. She wouldn't listen and told me that if I truly cared about her, I wouldn't interfere. I felt cornered and frustrated, but I thought maybe I could wait and see if Mark's behavior revealed itself in time. Then came the wedding invites. Emma sent me a beautifully printed card with a note saying, "Can't wait to celebrate with you. Hope you're as excited as we are." I froze when I read it. After everything, I couldn't bring myself to go. I tried to explain to her again over the phone that attending felt like condoning something I thought was fundamentally wrong. She called me selfish, dramatic, and accused me of trying to make her cancel the wedding entirely. I ended up writing her a long message explaining my position. I told her I couldn't attend because I couldn't ignore what I knew, and that while I loved her and wanted her happiness, I couldn't support a marriage that seemed built on deception. I offered to be there for her emotionally in any way I could, but physically attending the wedding was out of the question for me. I expected anger, but I wasn't prepared for the family backlash. Our parents called me the next day, and it was a mess. They said I was overreacting, that Mark was a good guy who had a complicated past, and that I was being disrespectful to Emma. My dad even suggested that if I refused to go, I shouldn't expect to be included in family events in the future. My mom cried on the phone, saying I was being rigid and judgmental. Other relatives reached out too, some saying they agreed with me, but most were pressuring me to just put it behind me for Emma's sake. I feel trapped. On one hand, I want to support my sister and be there for her wedding. On the other, I feel like I'm betraying my principles and ignoring what I believe is a serious issue. Emma hasn't spoken to me much since I declined the invite, and I don't know if she'll ever forgive me. I'm also worried about the ripple effect this might have on the family dynamic for years to come. I keep questioning myself. Am I overreacting? Should I just attend and pretend everything is fine? Or am I justified in standing by what I believe is the right thing to do, even if it means risking my relationship with my sister and family? So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after discovering her fiancé may still be married and has a history of manipulating women. Character count, 6,423, white heavy check mark if you want. I can write 2 more variations of this story with different twists, each hitting the 6 to 7K character range, so it's ready to be submitted as popular Reddit-style content. That way you'd have options to see which one resonates most. Do you want me to do that? Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.